Tara Lynn with 5 Acres Honey Farm. I am about to do my annual inspection for the Certified Naturally Grown program. If you're not familiar with the Certified Naturally Grown program, CNG, it's a national certification and it's a peer-reviewed accreditation where other beekeepers or other CNG members will do an annual inspection for other members so that everyone is making sure they're staying up to date with the CNG standards. I am a remote inspector for the CNG apiaries. So if you are watching this and you are an apiary within the CNG network and you need someone to inspect your colonies, just reach out. And if you are a beekeeper and you're interested in joining CNG, feel free to reach out and I'm happy to send you some more information. Before I head out to the hives, it's just much easier for me to chat with you when I'm not got all the equipment and everything on. And I'll link also to last year's inspection, which I did I did the entire inspection out in the apiary and went through the whole form. So to give you some background, there's just a kind of a multi-page inspection report, and the way I found is really helpful to run these remote inspections is that I just go through each item in the sequence that I see it in the inspection. So that way, whoever is completing the inspection, which this one is remote, so someone else remotely will be watching this and completing the form, they can just go through the form line by line and have all their answers right there for them. One of the first categories are on-site observations. So looking at, do the hives seem adequately supported by nectar, with the nectar and pollen from the surrounding area. So when I get out to the apiary, I'll kind of walk through the pollen and the nectar stores. All of the colonies, it's been about a week since I've been in there. They are very varied in their pollen and their nectar right now. So we're in the second week of November here in the North Carolina Piedmont area. So the pollen sources are pretty much coming to an end. There was a big goldenrod flow in like late September in that time. And we do have aster that just started blooming, the climbing aster. Some of the earlier asters have already bloomed, but there are some pollen sources still available there. We had a frost last week, but it really didn't get any of the blooming plants out at this point. So there's still a lot blooming. And we will have like our first real frost sometime next week. So like I still have sunflowers blooming, which is like a really nutritious pollen source. And I make sure that I'm actively succession planting more forage sources throughout each season. So like I planted more sunflowers Labor Day weekend, knowing that there is a good chance they're gonna have like that extended pollen source from them. Is the land on which the hive's located free of synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, and all of those different materials and inputs? Yes, I don't use any synthetic fertilizers or pesticides or herbicides. I have used, just as fertilizer, I make my own compost tea. I have a worm bin, so I make an actively aerated worm tea, and I use that on the plants. So no need for any synthetic products there. In a residential area, are the hives situated with sensitivity to neighbors' interests? Yes, we have just over 5 acres that we're on, and we have the hives set up very comfortably away from the road and away from the neighbor's property line. And are all the hives situated where they're getting at least 4 hours of sunlight a day? Yes, they are. They get probably 8 to 10 hours of sunlight per day. They get that first morning light. They are facing south east, so they're getting that early light there. The hives are all length strath hives, and they all have screened bottom boards. And right when I see that the temperatures are going to drop into the 40s overnight consistently, I add an IPM board into all the hives. So that helps with drafts, and I also have reduced all the entrance reducers to the smallest setting, and that also prevents drafts. So they have that. I also installed a pond last fall. So the bees have their own dedicated water source, and I kind of train them to go there by putting a bowl of lemongrass water next to the pond, so they just constantly go to the pond. Absent of the pond, there is a creek less than a quarter mile from our house that is actively running, and then we have a seasonal creek in our backyard, so that's another source of clean water for the bees. We also have inside the hives, which I'll demonstrate when I get over to the hives. And part of the CNG program is that you are rotating out old comb. So every 4 years, your colony has like brand new comb, brand new in the sense that it's, you know, guaranteed that your comb is no more than 5 years old. And that helps reduce the exposure of any like long-term pesticide residue or any disease and pathogens and, you know, mold and spores and things like that. So I have all of my frames numbered with the year that I started using them. So I've got any frames that were from like 2017 I used in swarm traps this year. And then I had a lot of new frames that I put in last year, but then the bees didn't really draw them out last summer. So like I have a lot of kind of crossed out numbers, and then I put, you know, the next year in where the bees actually drew the comb out, because I want the age of the comb, not just the age of the frame. And you can see I've got, you know, 2019 frames in here. So like all the frames in this super are all from 2019. That's because I rotate through. I do not paint my hives. All of the hives are treated with Eco Dip. It's an eco wood application. It's just mineral based. It's approved for these purposes. All the hives, like I mentioned, are Langstroth, so all the frames are removable. And there are separate chambers for brood and for honey. So I just keep adding boxes during the nectar flow so that they can just build their nectar stores above. I do not use queen excluders. So they, you know, just naturally put their brood and their nectar where they need it. The next section is about general practices. I need to decide how much honey I'm going to remove from the hive. I really look to have anything that's over an excess of a full super. I purposefully do not take any honey from a hive if they haven't produced more than a full super of honey for themselves. That's what they have, foraged and collected. So, and that's more nutritious than me feeding them sugar syrup through the summer to get them through the time of dearth here. So I make sure that they've got a full super on at the end of the nectar flow, and anything more than that I will take from them. I also will only take honey from the hives that are in that excess, but also ones that I did not feed at any point during the nectar flow. This year, there were some hives that seemed like they needed some food supplement during the nectar flow, and they weren't bringing in what the other hives were. So I did feed those hives, and so I didn't extract from them. I only extracted from a hive this year out of the 6 that I have, and I only had, I think it was like less than a gallon of honey. So it's just been for friends and family. So when we get to the questions about how I'm labeling and selling them, I think I only sold like 2 or 3 bottles this year because there really wasn't enough to fulfill the rest of the orders that came in. I always make sure that there is no excessive sugar feeding. Like I'll feed them maybe every other day if they look like they really need some syrup, or I feed them just like twice a week. And I make sure when I do my inspections to see like what are they bringing in when I'm not feeding them. And I also make sure that when they are bringing in nectar and also when I'm feeding them, that if they're storing that nectar in their food store area, or if they start storing it where their brood is, then I don't want them to get honey bound, and that's usually a sign they don't have enough space. So then there'll be more space given rather than more food given to them. For supplemental feeding, I make my own syrup from just regular cane sugar and water. And one thing that I started doing this year, I've been researching a lot more about biodynamic beekeeping. I make my own bee tea. So I use herbs from around the property. CNG has a recipe for bee tea. So this is something that is approved for CNG purposes. And so I just use the herbs that they've noted there. So like lemongrass, thyme, lavender, they're pretty much, your standard run-of-the-mill herbs. So I brew a tea and I use that as the base for when I make the syrup. So that I just add the sugar in there. So they're basically having a really sweet tea drink. If I am going to extract from a hive, like I mentioned before, I don't feed them that supplemental sugar, syrup, or bee tea. I make sure that if I have to feed the hive, then I just make a note like I'm not extracting from that hive. So that is my priority, is what the hive needs. Like where I'm extracting honey from is never factors into that. That's just kind of a bonus of kind of what comes out of the season. I do not harvest any wax. I don't reuse any in the hive because I don't harvest any. I do not use the honey frames, the sugar, I'm sorry, not the sugar, the wax cappings from the honey. I use a roller for extracting, and that just kind of punctures holes in all the wax cappings on the honey frames, and then I put it through an extractor. So because I'm not harvesting that wax, I don't really want to go through the effort of having all that mess. So the roller has been a really great affordable investment in there. And then let's see, that's not applicable because I don't harvest the wax. I also don't harvest any pollen or propolis. And this year I didn't. Last year, in last year's inspection, I mentioned I harvested propolis for personal use, but this year I did not harvest any at all. Let's see. And I do not move the hives for pollination or for any other purposes. I do not have any contracts for those pollination type of services. So I have a few different approaches for Varroa management. I have been doing mite counts every month, or I guess like every 6 weeks or so, I should say, through the seasons here. And so far the mite counts have been 0, which I am having a hard time believing. I need to do mite counts this month, and I really should have done them last month, but we've had a lot of stuff going on in the family, because I really don't want to disturb the population at this point when they're going into winter. I might just treat them with oxalic acid, the vaporization, which is what I've used in the past, as soon as I see that there's a brood break, which I'm hoping to see when I head out to the apiary today. So once I see that each colony's got a brood break happening for the winter, I can do an OA treatment on all of them. And that way that'll kind of help, if there is any, or if those mite counts that I've been doing have been inaccurate, then that will help them. I also have those IPM boards, like I mentioned, that I just put in the hives because it's gotten chillier out, so I can keep an eye on those for any mite counts that'll be coming in too. I have not had any American foul brood or European foul brood or nosema or tracheal mites and all those different diseases. I haven't had those before. Last fall, one of my colonies did experience what I had an apiary inspector come out from the state, because I had a colony that died, or actually a colony that was kind of fledgling and then it died. But what she understood from it was that they were severely deficient in nutrients. And so she had recommended a pollen substitute, but when I researched the pollen substitute, it was not approved by CNG. So I did a lot of research and I looked over the approved substitutes from CNG and then found an affordable vendor. So I had given that colony a pollen substitute. That colony, I'm going to check my notes. I'm pretty sure that colony did pull through the winter, but that's the only experience I had. So it was just kind of like a nutrient deficiency for that colony. As far as wax moths and small hive beetles, I remove any frames from like swarm traps where I've seen wax moths establish themselves, and I discard those double bagged in garbage, and I don't even keep the woodenware. I just get rid of them. Otherwise, before I store any bee equipment in the house, I have a bee freezer. It's exclusively used for bee supplies, and I leave the equipment in the freezer for at least 4 days. I used to just leave it in for 2 days and kind of rotate equipment out, but I've just been leaving it in longer and then just storing it so that the sunlight can hit it. and it's just open air. Small hive beetles, I've just been using nematodes, and then I manually will kill them if I see them. So beneficial nematodes are applied on the ground. I did a video about applying beneficial nematodes, which I can also link. And so that has more information about the strain of nematodes that I've used, which is from Arbico Organic. Currently, my hives are not in transition. They've been in the CNG program for several years now. I do not label my honey as part of any varietal because I do not have it tested to see the nectar content of it. I also do not mix my honey with any other apiary's honey, and I do not purchase honey for resale, and I do not package honey differently that way. I just have only the honey that I extract. And as far as marketing it, I really haven't had a need to very aggressively market the honey. I do share a lot about my beekeeping practices on Instagram, and folks find me through there, and just friends and family are generally people who get referred to me that are interested in honey. As far as reviewing records for Varroa, so I can share some really messy notes that I take, mainly because I'm usually at the hives and like wearing my gloves and trying to take notes, and I'll show you like how I've been documenting the mite counts. I don't do like all the hives mite counts at once because I make sure I find the queen in the colony, and that way I know I'll put her aside and I'll do a mite count, which I have a video about as well, and I can share more about that too. I'll just usually do 1 to 2 hives at a time, and then my next inspection I'll do another 1 to 2 hives, and so on and so on. And yeah, you'll see information in there about any treatments. I have not treated my colonies at all this year, which is remarkable. I have, in all the years I've been beekeeping, usually there's some type of summer or fall treatment. But given the 0 mite counts that I've been getting, I decided to withhold from any treatments. It didn't seem necessary. And as far as like hive locations, I have charts in my notes that I'll show you. And when I do any kind of splits or swarm catching and I'm moving the colonies around, that's when I draw out a new kind of apiary map of it. And then I haven't had any exposure to, wax exposure of anything there. And I do mark the frames, like I mentioned, that will get removed based on the year. No pollination contracts, that's not applicable. And then I will write down in my books like when CNG inspections have occurred as well. All right, I might make this video a 2-parter because I'm noticing I'm like getting close to the 20-minute mark and I haven't even made it out to the apiary yet. So thanks for listening for such a while on this, and this is probably giving you a really good perspective on what would need to be done if you wanted to join the CNG program. CNG requires you list out any inputs. So as far as inputs this year, I haven't had any. Like I said, I might do an oxalic acid vaporization in the next few weeks, depending on what the brood looks like right now. I really want no brood to do that. The only other input that I've had in the apiary has been the beneficial nematodes to help control the small hive beetle populations. Any kind of like fertility management and pest management of the soil in the area and in my garden and everything. We added quail to our homestead last year, so I have them in the apiary in a enclosed space, so their unit can move around, so they are able to scratch around on the earth. So they're helping to kind of create these new planting areas, and I'll be moving them into a high tunnel that we just put up this year. So those are some things that are new in the apiary, are the quail and the high tunnel. So the high tunnel is offering, I believe, in what it's going to be offering is that on those warmer winter days, I'll be able to open that up, and there will be more nectar and foraging sources for the bees than there was in the past, because I've got that year-round growing now available in the high tunnel, which is right in front of the hives. The quail I'm planning on putting in the high tunnel, not when it's open, so they're going to be in there and they're going to be managing the pests. They're going to be helping build soil fertility with their droppings, and they're just going to be hanging out where I can just throw them any small weeds and they'll take care of it for me. The chickens free range around the other side of the property, and they manage pests and weeds and help build soil fertility in those areas. We have in the past used a weed burner to eliminate weeds, but we didn't really have time for any of that weed management this year. So, you know, we just mowed pretty extensively, and then any planting areas I have put down cardboard, and then we put down topsoil or compost on top of that. So, you know, no kind of weed killer inputs other than that suppression method. To use a product, I check and make sure it's approved by CNG first. And if I'm trying to find a product, I use the CNG approved products list, and then I look where I could purchase it. And as far as like reducing or eliminating any inputs, like I feel like, you know, I got my permaculture design certification last winter. So all of my efforts are just moving in a direction of, you know, making all of the forage in the area just perennial and sustainable in and of itself. So that will kind of reduce the need for any kind of potential inputs as we grow more growing spaces. And then let's see, I think we're on the last page. So again, thanks for hanging in there. As far as anything notable or outstanding about this space here, being that the inspector, you know, is watching this video and isn't here, we have a really gorgeous property. I'll try to take some footage so that you can kind of see. There's a lot of mature trees, so there's maple and tulip poplar. We have some tupelo trees, and those are great nectar sources for the bees, and ironwood as well. And I've added I added almost a dozen apple trees last fall winter, and I also added some fig trees this year, and just I'm constantly adding new plants every season. So that there's just a lot here. And I feel like our new pond is a great feature too. And as far as any violations, I'm not aware of that I'm violating any CNG standards. So if you're noticing anything, please note that on the form and what would need to be taken. And that pretty much covers it. Next, I will head out to the apiary and show you a little bit more in the hive. Smoker lit. I had already smoked this hive. This is one of my smaller colonies I'm going to start with. And according to my notes, the lawnmower is going across the street. According to my notes, I want to consolidate this this colony. It's 3 boxes right now. I want to consolidate it to 2. So just to give you an idea, all of the colonies right now, I'm going to move this so you can get a better perspective. All the colonies right now have feeders on them just to make it easy to feed. Some of them are kind of on the border where they don't really need to be fed, but all of them can benefit from some extra nectar right now, some syrup. So this colony, let's take a peek in here. It was looking pretty small last week, and I just wanted to give them some time to see what, and there's a yellow jacket flying around, so I might be pretty brief. I might save consolidating them to another day. Actually, they look pretty good right now, but we'll see what it looks like further down below. So just to give you an idea, there's some fairly, not super strong coverage on the bottom of the feeder, and I'm seeing, you know, pretty good size colony in here right now. I'll just give you a little peek so you can see all the bees in there, and you can kind of see my little notes on the frames too, like when I had a frame break in the extractor, so that way I know to be careful with it. And you can see I've got, you know, 2019 frames in here, so like all the frames in this super are all from 2019. That's because I rotate through. So let me go grab my frame hangers. This colony looks pretty calm right now, but because that yellow jacket was around, they might get a little, agitated. So many squirrels. So in the box below this to see what the population looks like, and that's what'll help me decide if I'm gonna, yeah, like this is totally empty, so that's a sign, and plus there was really not much population on that too. Let's see. And this frame is super light, also empty, so this is also a sign that like these frames, they don't need that extra space to patrol this time of year. And this is pretty much telling me, yeah, this one's also empty. So like one, they're not storing the food up here, so they're probably storing it further down in the brood. I just want to see if these center frames have any brood on them, because if they do, then I want to make sure those get moved down to the boxes that I'll keep out here. So this is all nectar. These are all just bees hanging out, having a snack. So you can see that's where they're migrating to just hang out here. No pollen. And like there's a small hive beetle right here, so I'm just killing that one. Yep, got that. So, you know, it's just an opportunity. Another one right here. So removing this extra space that they're not using is going to help them control the beetles that are in here. But yeah, what I'm seeing is that they need to be fed, and that they don't need all this space. And I'm looking down, and it's definitely like the colony is pretty tiny. I'm going to take this box off, and then I'm going to remove any empty frames from the box below it. And these nectar frames I'm going to put down there, so that way they'll just have what they need. And I'll keep the feeder on, and before I go in, I've got my BT that I made today, and I'm going to fill them up so they'll have a great snack. And it's going to be another 75-degree fall day tomorrow, so they'll have an opportunity to get that down. I just took that top box off, and there's definitely a lot of clustering in this area, so I'm assuming the queen is in this box. And just like I described, I'm gonna just take a peek in here. These are probably empty frames here in the front. There is really no bee coverage on them. Nectar frames we just looked at in that top box, I'm gonna put those in here. So on these frames, just give you an idea of like, these are also labeled with 19 right on here. So these are 2019 frames. There is one frame from 2018. But yeah, these are all, you know, this one's empty. So I'm gonna put this just on the side here, make some room. This is a 2018 frame, so no problem taking that out. This can go in a swarm trap next year. It's really funny to me how this frame is older, this one's newer, but you could, like, this one looks older, it's so much darker. Just really depends on what the bees are doing with it. And I do want to make sure I find the queen, because if I don't, like if I don't see her in here, and if there's no signs of laying, it may mean that she failed, and it would be an opportunity for me to combine this with another hive. But so far I'm not seeing that. I see them clustering in this area. I just want to make sure I keep it over the hive box in case she falls off. I don't want her falling on the ground. Oh, there she is. I'll just bring her over here a moment so you can see she is hanging out right here. Oops, let me move this down. Yep, she's running around right here. So this is Queen Tammy, named after my mom. This was a swarm that I captured in May. So I'm not sure how old she is. This has a lot of pollen on it. I don't know if you can see, but there is a tremendous amount of pollen. So this was actually the last frame along the side of the box. So I'm gonna kind of move the brood nest closer to the center, and I'll make sure that it's kind of bookended by this pollen and by the nectar from the other box. So that way they've got a nice little cozy space to hang out and stay warm. All right, so what I also just did was I moved the bottom box to the top now, because they're not really storing much down there, and because I rearranged that previously middle box to have all the brood and food. Now when I feed them, they can store all their extra food in that top box, so it'll be easy for me to open this up and take a peek at their food stores in the next few inspections. This is the BT that I made. I just reused a water bottle, but it's got that kind of faint coloring to it. So I had the lemongrass and thyme and lavender, and I usually go about a third to a half, depending on how many more colonies I'm feeding, so I'm not sure how much I'll feed the next one. So we'll just give them that for now. Okay, I'm gonna jump in this colony. And I'm gonna pull this. And this is pretty light, not too much population on the feeder. And not that clustering that I saw in the other colony. So like this is pretty low, and from what I'm looking in here, it looks like most of the population, I'll just show you, is really further down. Like right now you're really not seeing too much happening up top. So I'm curious to see what's up top here. Full of nectar, and the ones next to it, so they've got a little bit that they're starting to store up here, so they might just be working mainly in the one below. So let's take a closer look at that one. And all of these frames are also labeled 2019 and 2020. A lot of new frames in 2019, hoping get a lot of new frames next year. Now some of the frames in here are from 2018. I'll just give you a peek. Over here. So all the labels are right along the side. This, oops, little bee is on the camera here. So those are all hanging out. And these colonies, at least you see that I just looked at, these aren't the population sizes I'd like to see for this time of year. I'd really like to see double the size so that they can stay warm throughout the winter. There's probably an opportunity. This is full of nectar. It's super heavy and shiny. There might be an opportunity for me to combine some of these. Sorry for all the background noise. It's a popular time to be out when it's this nice out. Another one full of nectar. So they're doing a good job storing, and they're doing it, you know, in the boxes that they're using. So this is another one where the population's fairly low. So I can take off that top box here too. It looks like she stopped laying just like the other one did as well. So that'll be good for me to treat them. And, oh, there she is. Take a quick step over here, and I'm gonna lose her there, but she's right here. She's running around. There she goes. I believe this is Queen Vera in this box, who's named after my mother-in-law who passed away this year. So yeah, she's in here, so that's great to see. So I know that she's not in that top box, so I can be pretty careful with these. And now in the top box, I'm going to take out the frames that had the nectar in it and move them into this box. So it turns out the hive that I just inspected was Queen Uma, and this is going to be Queen Vera, and this is going to be probably the last one we'll have time for before sunset. There are a lot of bees here at the top of the feeder. I'm going to see if I can get this closer for you. Okay. Looks like great coverage on all the frames. According to my notes, this colony had incredible brood the last time I checked it. So I'm expecting that the population is going to be larger, or it's about to be larger. Yeah, this looks a lot more populous than the other two colonies. This is full of nectar, both sides here. It's pretty heavy. This is starting to get full of nectar, so they're working on it, and they're working on the next one too. So just as my notes from last time, this one can still be fed, but their population looks really good. Feeding them the rest of the syrup here. So each of these colonies just got a quart of the bee tea. This is my bee journal. I've had it for years now. It's ever since I started beekeeping, and I only have a few pages left. So it's lasted me quite a while. Got the little CNG on here, plus some little bee stickers. So I'll give you a peek inside of the types of notes that I take. So here's an example of like the charts that I put in of like, these are all the hive stands, but then I had like what
what I did between these two colonies and like how big they were. And then I have dates. I started including the highs and the low temperature of the day and the time of the temperature when I started the inspections. I take notes based on like box numbers. So I like starting with box 1 on the bottom. If I see queen cups, if I see the queen, and usually I'll put where I saw her. So I saw queen patience in box 3. The hive was really calm. And this kind of gives me a good idea, like, you know, as the colonies grow, like disposition of queens and their colonies. You know, I moved some colonies around. So like I noted that in here. And again, like anytime there's things changing, like these boxes were growing so quickly. So I would put out, you know, the new boxes that I put on. And here I was picking a spot for where I was going to put the swarm that I caught, which was that first colony that we just took a peek at. Here, I did treat with oxalic acid. So correction there, I did do a treatment of the swarm. So I did, earlier I said that I didn't do any oxalic acid treatments this year. So I remember now, yes. This is why it's great to have notes. As soon as I brought that swarm over, I did their treatment, like I think within like 3 days or so. Yeah, that's about it, right? It's 5/21, moved the swarm there on 16th. So yeah, 5 days later, I did that treatment. I put notes if I'm killing small hive beetles. So that gives me an idea of like which colonies are facing more of them. Mite counts in June, and actually both of these queens had 0 mites. So this is kind of it's very messy, but it's kind of in my own shorthand where I have a good idea of, you know, how to check on the history of each colony. And here's an example of like today. You know, November 9th, around 4:15 to 5, we just, you know, what you just saw was the CNG inspection recording, and today's high was 76, low 41. It was 66 at the time of inspection. And then for each hive, I put the notes if I saw the queen, and that's that.